r/AskReddit. Cops of Reddit, what's the most bullshit sounding excuse you got that actually turned out to be true? No cops are posting in here anyway, so I'll throw my hat into the ring as a defense attorney. Guy pulled over for impaired driving and charged later with AWI. My boss gets the criminal complaint and the guy shows up for his initial appearance and tells her he hadn't been drinking despite horrifically failing the sobriety test. She's literally sitting next to him, and he's obviously wasted again. Disappointing but not uncommon for alcoholics. The deputies arrest him for bail jumping because he drove himself to court that day, and while out on bail he's not supposed to drink. He adamantly denies drinking. Blood tests come back. He didn't drink. Dude's diabetic without knowing it, and naturally got himself drunk, because sometimes when it goes untreated, diabetes can cause symptoms that look just like intoxication. Got him some insulin and the charge is dismissed. Edit, since there are so many people with the same questions. As far as I'm aware, the guy did the field sobriety test and failed. The last part of the test is the breathalyzer, which he refused. Refusal is an automatic failure in and of itself without failing the nystagmus. Follow the finger, walk, leg lift, and count. He didn't know he had diabetes. I already stated it in the original comment, but yeah, dude developed diabetes at some point and wasn't aware he had it until the case. AWI in Wisconsin is what DUIs in other parts of the US. Your first AWI is not a criminal offense, it's just a ticket in Wisconsin. So it would have been at least this guy's second drunk driving accusation, but seeing as diabetes wasn't raised as a defense the first time, my assumption is he probably developed it after. I had a run-in with the cops a few years ago, and I wonder exactly what they thought when they first stopped me. I had taken a cab back from a work party, and I was pretty drunk. My friend and I had just moved to this new apartment, so I accidentally gave the cab driver the wrong address. I ended up on a block that looked very similar to mine, and a building that looked like mine. There were 2 doors before getting to my apartment door, which was on the first floor. Like my apartment building, they left the first door unlocked and locked the second door. I kept trying my keys to open it, but I couldn't and was confused. I went outside to look for my car, and it wasn't parked there. That's when I realized I was on the wrong block. I started walking in the direction I thought my apartment was when a cop car pulls up. They ask me what I'm doing, and I tell them I'm really drunk and I just want to go home, which was the honest truth. They told me they got a call about someone trying to get into an apartment building. I guess the people in that apartment building woke up and thought I was trying to break in. They were super suspicious of me at first, but eventually it became clear I was just some drunk idiot and not a burglar. They ran me through to make sure I didn't have warrants or anything, and when I checked out they offered me a ride home. The ride back was hilarious, because when we were getting to my apartment I tried telling them that it was a bit complicated to get to because of all the one-way streets. The officer driving was like, "Who do you think you're with?" and then turned on the lights and went the wrong way down the street to get me home faster. It honestly felt like I was with the 2 cops from Superbad. Popped a college kid for shitty driving and pulled 100 grams of weed off of him. Also, a 1-pound glass pipe shaped like a huge nail. No biggie. Also find weed under the other college kids in the car. Driver falls on the sword and tells me all of it is his and lets his friends walk free. I like this kid. However, during the search we find packaged D's in the cellophane of a cigarette pack with the top melted closed. Ask kid if has dealing a D's at school. Tell him I am aware of the prescription pill epidemic. He says no and spins a huge yarn about how he only carries a few on him because has had his orange pill bottle stolen so many times. Kid seems like a pretty good dude. I decided to take the X-Files approach. Supervisor tells me pursue charges for dealing. Blah blah blah. I tell the kid he has one chance to prove he's telling the truth. Shows me the broken glass under his driver's seat from a vehicle burglary. Gotta do better. I follow behind him back to his dorm. He lets me in and shows me the busted footlocker he kept them in under his bed. Dunno. Kinda weak. Supervisor's telling me to hurry and drop the axe. Tell him to do better. He calls one of the soccer team assistants up and we meet him in the locker room. Shows me the little wooden locker which has a broken lock. Assistant coach tells me they have replaced the lock on his cabinet 3 times. Campus security has numerous reports of medicine theft from this kid. Nice. I call supervisor up and tell him I have no grounds to pursue delivery charges. Poor bastard just kept getting his Adderalls jacked, and being the big dumb meatball he was, he started packaging them like that. I end up talking to his best friend breaking up a house party a couple months later. Friend tells me kid is a stand-up guy who only uses weed due to extreme anxiety. Totally believable from my interaction with him, and has never sold anything in his life. Friend thanked me and told me his buddies spoke well of me. Friend also tells me he had to drive his buddy to the hospital a few hours after I left from a panic attack due to the whole incident. I felt bad for the kid. So now, whenever I see him smoking up in his car in the mall parking lot I just wave. *THANKS for the gold. I'm honored, but it's not needed. Put it in a savings account. Money is a bitch to get, so hold on to it. If you have to part with it, donate it to St. Jude's Children Research Hospital. They do good shit there. Guy flew by me in the emergency/breakdown lane while we are in stopped traffic due to a crash a few miles north. So naturally I pull into the emergency lane, put my lights on, and get him to stop. Walk up to the car and go, dude, what the hell? Are you serious? And I see he's sweating. Like, shit sweating. On the verge of tears. I should probably call for sweating. He tells me he had gone to lunch at a buddy's and went back to buddy's house and fell asleep. When he woke up he knew something was wrong and didn't want to blow up his friend's bathroom. Fair. Still asked for his license, registration, whole 9 yards, because if this guy's gonna be a moron I might as well do something. But didn't give him a ticket, since I figured the high possibility of him shitting himself on his way home would be better than a $163 ticket and 3 points on his license. Told him to wait in the travel lanes like everyone else, and that his car better be at the gas station that's at the exit 1/2 mile down the road. It was, so I assume he didn't ruin his car. Okay, so legit answer. One night I'm out working, and as I go down the street, fairly nice middle class area surrounded by some high crime neighborhoods. Around midnight I see a dude on a bike, no lights on, pulling a lawnmower behind him on a rope. I immediately flip a 180 and light him up. Recognize the guy as a local homeless dude with some prior burglary/theft arrests. I walk up and just open with, dude, come on. Guy holds his hands out and swears he didn't steal the lawnmower. Claims someone just gave it to him. I ask who, and he doesn't know a name. So I demand he tell me where to find said lawnmower owner. The directions he gave were literally go that way a bit, then right at a stop sign, and take one of those side streets that way. It's about halfway down a street, at a house that has a pickup and a car in the driveway. By this point backup had arrived, so I leave him in the presence of backup and drive off in search of his mythical donor of lawn equipment. I made a decent guess as to the first turn, then flipped a mental coin as to which of the next 3 side streets he would have gone down. I pick the second of the 3 streets and start down it. Every other fucking house has a truck and car combo. There must have been a dozen houses that matched the description. Halfway down, I see an average looking house and go I'll try this one. After all, it's midnight and this is a wild goose chase. Go up, ring the doorbell. Middle-aged dude comes to the door. Hello sir, have you been giving away lawnmowers to random sketchy homeless guys at midnight today? Yes. As a matter of fact, he had. Homie Arwana goes on to complain to me that his wife was upset at his continual inability to get the mower running and had ordered him with some severity to remove the mower from the house or face the consequences. He pushed it to the curb right as homeless guy rode by, and the latter had asked and received his permission to take it. I drove back in shock and amazement. apologized to homeless guy, and sent him on his way. A few months later we ran into each other at a nearby gas station, and he told me it turned out just to need a new spark plug, and that he had gotten it running again, before going on to sell it for $150 to someone. 4 years after, whenever I would run into him, he would always make sure to remind me of the money he made from selling that stolen lawnmower, lol. I'm a deputy cop, but we work the county/unincorporated areas, me and a few sector partners. Second smallest county in the state, fourth highest population. So we have a lot of deputies in a tiny area. We're hanging out at a gas station at about 3 AM to get some coffee and a snack, outside chit-chatting waiting for the next call to come in. Guy pulls up in a pewter colored Oldsmobile with a hubcap missing, hops out of the car and starts pumping gas. One of us noticed he had a gun holster on his right side, but couldn't see a gun because his shirt was over it. Us being an open carry state, no big deal. However, the gun was concealed by the shirt, so we just stopped to talk with him. Explained to him that he can't conceal the gun. He said no problem, it was a mistake from him getting out of the car. Understandable. Other partner looks in the passenger side of the car, and there's a fist-sized saran wrap bag of white powder with multiple $20 bills underneath it sitting on the passenger seat right in plain view. Now to us, a gun, large size bag of white powder, good bit of money underneath, appears to be drug related. Start asking the guy like, yo, what is this crap, and why is it just on your seat? He says, oh, it's powdered wall plaster. I just got it from my grandma. It's 3 AM at a gas station. I mean, come on. We are cops, so by all means we aren't the smartest people on the planet, but we ain't stupid. Or so we thought. Turns out the dude is 100% telling the truth. Gun was legal and legally obtained. His only history we could dig up was speeding tickets and a simple affray charge from years ago. Grandma gave him the plaster so he could fix a hole in his wall, and he didn't have cash to buy it himself, so she spotted him some moolah. Needless to say, he's got a funny story to tell, and I guess now I do too. He was super understanding and even himself said it was hilarious because it absolutely looked like pure cocaine, and it looked like a huge amount, at least for lowly street deputies. My department frequently had to deal with this male escort who kept getting released in work release programs. No joke, we caught this guy giving out handjobs in broad daylight at stoplights. Anyways, I and a few coworkers leave town for a conference, and guess who we fucking find up to his old tricks? Outside of our jurisdiction. So we don't do anything about it besides report him, but we talk to him, and he gave some bullshit excuse about how he was flown in on a private jet for some record deal. Yes, he had mentioned his hip hop career to us earlier. No, I never got his SoundCloud link. Anyways, we sort of forget about him until we get to the Greyhound station, and he fucking is again up to his normal tricks. He obviously wanted to deflect the conversation from what he was doing, so he offered to give us a ride back to our city in his private jet. We detain him, but before we can even call the local station, limo rolls up, and the chauffeur walks around with a sign with his name on it. Dude was telling the truth about his record deal. We definitely upgraded our travel arrangements after apologizing for not believing him. Little shit still gives us regular trouble, of course. Mid-July in like 2008. Young kid going 93 in a 55. I swing and he immediately pulls over. Approaching the car, his first words, before I can even start speaking, my dog died. He hung himself. I gotta get back before my mom gets home. What point JPG. Anyway, he calls other family members. His aunt, uncle and 2 cousins come out to the stop, and between all their sobbing, they verify that the dog had actually hopped over the fence on a leash/runner and couldn't get back over. Everyone's crying now. They showed me a photo on their phone. Apparently they found the dog and called the kid at work and he just left. I didn't even bother verifying further than that. Cousin drove the kid's car back so they could take care of the dog and prepare for mom. Some said that I should have wrote him, but losing an animal sucks enough. He knew he fucked up, and adding financial burden to him wasn't going to help him or me. I went to a disturbance at a backyard BBQ once. Turns out it was a bunch of Roma gypsies. As I was trying to figure out what was going on, I had some old lady approach me and want to talk to me off to the side. She told me she was an informant for the FBI and that if I left, she would be able to get some information on a matter the FBI was interested in. I rolled my eyes and thanked her and said I would be out of there as soon as I could make sure there was no violence going on. Anyway, I determined it was just verbal, so I cleared the call and went back in service. About 15 to 30 minutes later, dispatch radioed me to head back to the station. I got there and got a message to call some FBI field office and ask for a certain agent. I called and sure as shit this agent said he understood I spoke with his informant and wanted to know everything she told me. Blew my mind. This was my favorite story from my 4th grade teacher, not a cop. She went to a cousin's wedding in mid-July. The cousin had overestimated how much champagne they would need at the reception and was giving away bottles to anyone who was interested. So my teacher took 3 and put them in the backseat of her car. Again, this was a hot summer day in July. After saying their goodbyes, my teacher, her husband, and her parents piled into the car and pulled out onto the highway, where 2 bottles burst open, spraying champagne everywhere and causing quite a ruckus. Of course, while this was happening, the car was swerving as the driver was also getting bathed in sparkling champagne. So it came as no surprise that, as soon as they collected themselves, they saw the familiar flashing lights of a state trooper and pulled over. According to my teacher, the first thing the cop said was, "I'm not gonna ask if you've been drinking, because I can smell it from here." My teacher tried explaining what had happened, but the cop wouldn't hear of it and ordered everyone out of the car. That's when the cop saw that everyone, both drivers and passengers, were dressed in their finery, but soaked with champagne and looking quite shaken. A cursory search showed the open bottles, but the cop still insisted on a quick sobriety check just to make sure. Not a cop, but I did get stopped by one for eating a taco. I worked at a community college in LA that had a high school right next to it. Well, there was a lot of drugs sold through the fence at the high school, so there was always a cops driving up and down the street between the schools. Couldn't get a parking pass since I just worked at the school, so I always parked on that street. Hit up Taco Bell for lunch and was sitting in my car eating my double-decker tacos when a cop drove past. Next thing I know, he's flipping a U-turn and heading right for me. He slides to a stop driver window to driver window and yells at, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Stunned, I just said eating my lunch. Well, he isn't buying it and says I'm hiding something. I just hold up my taco and looked so confused. He burst out laughing and peeled out. Saw him a few times after that, and he always waved and had the biggest grin on his face. Not a cop, but I once got pulled over by a fire truck. It was Orlando, in August, 1990. It was close to 100 outside. I worked for a computer rental company. We would rent computers to companies in town for trade shows, or for a lot of other situations. The company van was a ragged out Chrysler minivan with 180k miles on it. The account didn't work, so the windows were down. I was coming back to the office in heavy rush hour traffic, and I found myself in a right turn only lane and couldn't get out in time. So I was forced to make the right turn. I hit the gas to speed up and get in front of people making a left turn into my same direction. I had to get all the way over to the left side to make a U-turn. So I cut off a fire truck to do it, one of the big squarish fire trucks with a flat front. I cut them off and got in the left turn lane to wait for the green arrow. I looked out the window to my left and saw a Dixie chopper lawnmower mowing the grass on the side of the road maybe 15 feet from me. It was already hot, but this tremendous wave of heat came in through the driver's side window. I thought, man, that's a hot lawnmower. The light turned green, and I started my U-turn. Halfway through it, this cloud of, I thought, steam came out of the hood and covered the windshield, so I couldn't see. The power steering also failed, so I fought the car, trying to get back to the gas station at the corner so I could find a payphone. Yes, that's how old I am. but because I couldn't see, I missed the turn and ended up turning into an apartment complex. About this time, the cloud stopped and I could see again. Still no power steering. So I fought the car to do a U-turn so I could get back to the gas station. At this point, the fire truck I had cut off turned into the apartment complex, full lights, and blocked me in. 2 huge firefighters got out of the truck holding fire extinguishers like beer cans. "Excuse me sir, did you know your van was on fire?" Turns out while I was cutting them off, I had been shooting flames out from under the passenger side of the van. They hit the lights, did a U-turn, and came back to me. The wave of heat wasn't from the lawnmower. They checked out the van and let me go. The cause turned out to be a damaged power steering line. It sprayed power steering fluid all over the exhaust manifold and caught fire. Okay, so I'm going to tell my crazy story as the person on behind the wheel. My uncle was divorcing his terrible wife. He was no saint, but definitely on the right side of their divorce. The wife was still on the paperwork to take their 2 kids out of the school, even though my uncle had temporary custody, while the courts did their thing. She had previously threatened to take them both and just run away, so I don't know why she was still on the paperwork. On picture day that year, she showed up to the school and signed both kids out and disappeared. I was not involved in the crazy process of calling the police and tracking the kids down, but I was pulled from school that day because I had my driver's license and could be an extra pair of hands. They managed to find the kids and they were turned over my grandmother and mom, but my niece was distraught that she would be missing picture day. It was her first time away from her terrible mother, and she was finally allowed to be a cheerleader, a dream in her tiny eyes. So, me having my car and nothing else better to do, offered to take her back to the school. My mom got the school to agree to keep the person there a little longer, but it was going to be by the skin of our teeth that we would make it as this was rural. Okay. We got in the car and I blasted down those dirt roads doing approximate 70 in a 35. Not a good decision on my part, but I was an anxiety-ridden 17-year-old dealing with a nasty divorce and kidnapping for the first time in my life. We, of course, get pulled over. I'm freaking out cause I can't afford that bad of ticket and all the crap that was coming in that day. The cop listened to the story and ignored my barely held in tears and said he would let us off with a warning because he believed the story. And the only reason he believed the story was that he had just pulled over my uncle going the same speed the opposite direction on the same road and go the same story. Edit, my cousin, not my niece. She has that sound in her name and I always get it wrong. And I have not idea if my uncle got a ticket as I was too self-absorbed at 17 to consider asking him. Former park ranger. First week in the job we pull up and see a couple of kids smoking in their car with the windows down. The city has an ordinance against smoking on park property, but it is too petty to give them a ticket. We approach the car and they are visibly nervous. My FTO looks through the windows and sees a couple of beer cans in the car. Bingo. We get them out and start running their info. They are all underage but old enough to smoke cigarettes. My FTO asks them where the beer came from. The driver says he recycles. FTO laughs and begins to search the car. I'm finishing up running their info and these guys are being really respectful. FTO finishes searching the cab and goes to open the trunk. All of a sudden I hear him bust out laughing. He is laughing so hard he can barely breathe. He waves me over to look at the trunk of the car and it is level with crushed cans and bottles. My FTO said that he has heard that excuse for 20 years and this is the first time it was true. He walked up, uncuffed the driver and let him go. Former marijuana here. Look it up, it is a Dutch thing. Police but also military. We also had jurisdiction over the American soldiers stationed here. One day we got called over to a possible case of domestic violence. We arrive at the house and the guy opened wearing only underwear. He told us he and his wife were all playing. Of course we didn't trust this and asked to see his wife. After denying us entry we told we would come back with a warrant. He reluctantly agreed to let us enter. So we go in and he opened the basement door and inside was the freakiest sex dungeon. I mean chains, whips things I couldn't identify hanging on the wall. And in the middle hanging in chains was his butt naked, gagged wife. We asked her, but she told everything was okay. Turned out they were really into some kinky stuff. Asked them to keep the screaming part in the basement and to a minimal. We did the whole thing with a straight face, but as soon as we were in the car. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.